but it's
Yeah.
it's recording now. Okay.
Cool. I just got that notification. It's good.
Cool. Lynelle, thank you for joining me. First of all, you know, how have you been? How have you been keeping up? How has the whole crisis affected you, if at all? And
Cool.
what are your projections?
Hi there, Ruan. Thanks so much for having this chat with me. I think it's really wonderful that we can do this and at a time like this with what's going on with everybody. I'm really good, actually. It's been, I think the initial part of the lockdown was a big adjustment. And coincidentally, I found myself in like a kind of a unofficial artist residency for that first initial 5 weeks. And that came with its own challenges. Artistically, it was a very fruitful time. But it's also, and this I discovered, it's an art to manage your own self and other people in a space. You know, we were 7 people in a house, and that becomes an art on its own.
Yeah,
like
I can imagine.
like cohabiting under stressful circumstances of not being able to go out, like being cooped up. But yeah, I just think what's been really wonderful for me is to discover all of the other practices that I've been developing, like especially for my mental health over the past couple of years, have really just kicked in and made me resilient in a way that's been very helpful with all of the other uncertainty happening around me. So yeah, it hasn't been without its challenges, but it's been a wonderful opportunity to learn about myself and to put those skills to the test.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, because I suppose like you and like everybody, you know, the first couple of weeks was, you know, incredibly sort of challenging to adapt to a new kind of pace and whatever. But it has gifted us with that sort of luxury of time, and you know, it's sort of been a nice opportunity to regroup. So that's so yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Um, Yes, that's cool. So, I mean, I saw that you've got a concert coming up on Sunday, is it? And so you're keeping busy.
Yes, I am. So one of the accompanists that I love working with, Stefan Lombard,
Yeah.
the two of us came up with a concept of just like making music and spreading our joy of music with a virtual audience. So it's going to be a live stream concert being facilitated at the Penny Lane Studios
Okay.
with the East Acoustics guys. They are running the show. I think, yeah, it's wonderful to have these new opportunities to be innovative in ways that we're able to work, because as all of us have seen, like in the industry, things have ground to a halt, and even support structures that are put in place to help artists like bridge the gap between not being able to work and earn and still running households. Like it's been
Yeah.
frustrating and disappointing, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can imagine. So what are you doing in the concert, repertoire wise? Or what kind of thing are you doing?
Repertoire wise, we're thinking of keeping it a bit lighter than just classical music and opera. It's going to be more like classical and crossover repertoire from the musicals, some art song, just, yeah, accessible music that feels transcendent and something suited to the times.
Lovely. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're doing all of this stuff now, but you know, all of those years back, you know, growing up in Paarl, um, was it always part of the dream? I mean, was opera something that was always around you? I mean, or how did you come into it?
Um, with my upbringing, music was always a part of that, but it was only during my later teen years that I even considered music as a career option, as a
Yeah,
profession.
yeah,
It was just the most natural thing to be. I was part of a church community where music features very prominently.
okay,
And it started off, I was also at a school where we had a small, like, one woman run music department. You know, it takes
Yeah.
one music teacher to change a child's life. And that was really what it was like. I started piano lessons in grade 1. In the church, they taught us how to play recorder. And so I was just reading music and making music and singing in the school choir, singing in the church.
Yeah.
It was just such a natural extension of my family life and like all of the extracurricular activities that I was doing. But when I was 16, that's when the shift came about. At the end
Yeah.
of grade 10, that was the year 2004. A friend of my father's saw a article in a newspaper calling people to audition for this new national youth choir that was starting at that time.
Yeah.
And like I managed to get an audition in last minute, sang for the conductor, which happened to be Andre van der Merwe. People know him. He conducts the Stellenbosch University Choir and the Stellenberg Girls Choir. So yeah, for the last 2 years of my school career, I went to sing in the choir, the girls' choir, the National Youth Choir. From there on, like my exposure to music and theater and classical music just broadened so much, and I started really thinking about it as a career choice.
Oh, and then did you then decide to then go on to study? Was that the next step? Or?
That was the next step. So the
Yeah.
singing teacher that I had at the school, she had some contacts at the UCT Music School, the
Yeah.
College of Music. And so we spoke about what my options were for after matric. And she
Yeah.
said to me, if you want stage experience, like you could either go and do a BMUS degree. Stellenbosch had great bursaries at that time, but I knew that I wanted to incorporate the stage work and not just concentrate on recital work and chamber music. So that was really a no-brainer for me because the UCT Opera School was the only opera school at that time that I considered worth applying to and going to. So that was the next step.
Lovely. Yeah. And I mean, yeah. And how did you find that? Because I mean, the great thing about, I mean, obviously, you know, you're a professional, so it's kind of assumed. But the nice thing, you know, when I remember speaking to you last, you know, the fact that you can sort of really back up musically, you know, there's sort of a fundament, you know, to what you do. So do you think that, you know, I mean, because this conversation about education, especially music, you know, studying music is, you know, has come up recently, you know, what's the relevance of it, you know? So do you think that you would have had the same kind of foundation if you didn't, you know, spend, you know, your 4 years or whatever it was doing a BMS?
Yeah. It's so nice to have like 2020 vision looking back retrospectively on things.
Yeah,
Um, I definitely knew that was at the time that was where I was supposed to be. But I also, in the 5 years that I spent there, um, realized that there is this uh, expectation of a career trajectory. Like if you're ambitious, there seems to be a certain path that people take, and
yeah,
and I knew pretty much very soon after completing the 5 years and like starting to apply for postgrads elsewhere, and like maybe young arts programs or studio work, um, that I don't know if this life is for me. I actually don't know if being a full-time classical singer is what I wanted, because it wasn't good for the space of mind like that I wanted to be in. And I could feel that even during the years that I spent at opera school. It's a Even though it's a creative environment, there's still so much competition and politics and a lot of questioning of oneself into how you fit into this world and into this mold that's expected of you. And in the subsequent years, other career options opened up to me, and I really came to a place where I started questioning everything and
yeah,
and thinking about the way that I wanted to experience living my life, the way that I wanted to feel, the things that were important to me. And so my life has been shifting since and is still shifting. Um, and I don't place as much of my identity and my worth into my professional career anymore. It's just a part of what I do, but it is not me. I'm
Okay.
still the essence of everything else that I do in the world. I venture out and share. But yeah, that's been like a complete process of disillusionment, of letting certain things die, of being like remaking yourself all the time and
Yeah.
considering your life as the art.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Because
yeah. I don't
one
know
of
if
the
that answers your question.
yeah, in a funny way, it really does. And I mean, one of the other questions that I obviously had for you was, because you don't only sing, you don't only do opera. I mean, even with your singing, you're not limited to just the classical thing, but you also obviously present and act. And I wonder whether that's um, whether you make distinctions between the three disciplines, or whether it's just an extension, of yourself, like singing is, or whatever, sort of creative outlet, or how you approach it.
Yeah, yeah. There's a fourth one that ties in with the presenting that I also do. I MC a lot of events, both in Afrikaans and in English. But that's part of my media personality work that I do. But between the different disciplines, it really is like it's like changing a hat or getting into a different car. Like you still know how to drive, but you have to
Yeah,
reacquaint yourself with the clutch. It's that kind of thing.
yeah,
And I try to give myself enough space between different projects to just shift into what's expected of me professionally when I move into a discipline. And that means like panel beating and learning and upskilling myself as I go along. But there's no substitute really for being as prepared as possible, for being open to learn, for bringing your enthusiasm and your energy to every new thing. And that's basically, yeah, the kind of feedback that I get from people working with me. Because in the going on 8 years that I've been in the industry now in those different fields,
yeah,
I've constantly had to do things that take me out of my comfort zone, like new things that
yeah,
challenge me.
yeah,
And like you decide going into a situation what the experience is that you'd like to have. Like
yeah,
the energy that you bring, your energy management becomes the most important. And that to me is like a whole holistic spiritual practice as well. And the feedback that I get from people is that it's nice to work with me. Yeah, and I want to work in a space where the projects that I take on and people that I collaborate with are projects that are meaningful to me, and the people
yeah.
that I work with, that we have genuine, authentic connection and relating to us. Otherwise, yeah, learning to say no to the things that feel like it's not in alignment with who I am and where I want to be going, that's become a vital skill to master in this time.
Yeah, lovely. Listen, I'm just going to pause the recording for a minute because I've just realized the door is open and there's quite a lot of noise coming in. I'm just going to pause it and we'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're back. Yeah, I mean, it's one way, one of the big things, that I mean, I remember meeting you. It was last year, if I'm not mistaken. We did,
Yeah, in
yeah,
Bloemfontein,
yeah,
of all
exactly.
places.
We did at least Oratorio, I think it was. But I remember meeting you, and the first thing that absolutely struck me was just your incredible energy and sort of positivity and just sort of I'm here kind of attitude. And is that something that you've had to work on, or is it something that has just come naturally to you always?
I think it's a combination of those two things. At I think the core of my essence as a human being, I am somebody that's um, optimistic and excited about things. But life also happens, you know, and it's the work that I intentionally put in to stay in that place with myself and to not let other things out or pile onto who I really am as a person. But that's, yeah, intentional, and that is a lot of work to manage that. I'm naturally an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert, so I
Yeah.
can pace myself when I go out into an environment where I'm connecting with people or performing. Then I can absolutely be the life of the party if it
Yeah.
needs to be. But what energizes me is to, what energizes me is to absolutely, the flip side of that, take the time to be alone and to be unstimulated, like to have my nervous system just give a chance to breathe, you know. And for that, I take a lot of time. Like one of my favorite things to do is like solo road tripping. That's something that's very important to me, which is obviously not possible under
Yeah.
lockdown regulation. But yeah, walks in nature, big gardens, sleeping, journaling, reading. Yeah, those things that just connect you with yourself again. That's important.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, because yeah, I mean, you know, doing a bit of research on you, so to speak, because I haven't known you for that long, obviously, so there were details that I had no idea about. But one of the things that I learned about you, and also through our chats, is that you know, like so many of us, have not been without sort of psychological challenges and all the funny things, you know, that we tend to go through in life, and especially us
Yeah.
artists, you know, with all the stuff that we have to deal with. But yeah,
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about some of the experiences, or how it all came up, and how you then got out of it?
Absolutely. I think as creatives and artistic minded souls, we really the lens through which we see and experience the world is different to people who
Yeah,
stick to, you know, conventional traditional career paths.
yeah,
And I've always been sensitive, um, like so many of us. And growing up, taking things at face value, and only later on starting to question things. So when I was 16, along with going to the choir, my mom was diagnosed with cancer that year, and what started off then became a 11-year journey of her having treatment and the cancer going back into remission. And by the third time she got sick in 2014, um, that was a very, very wonderful time of my career. Like things were happening. I just landed the lead in West Side Story, like my first big role. So on that end of the spectrum, like career wise, things were going really well. But because my mom was sick for so long, I just had been repressing so much of like my feelings in relation to that. And combined with coming from a religious family and a very like set kind of culture,
yeah,
uh, yeah, it was hard for me to find my own voice and my own individuality and my own way of relating to things in a healthy way. There was just so much a denial of that. And it's funny because West Side Story that year, like it was the production that kind of put me on the map. You know, people suddenly
yeah,
knew that I was a musician. They knew what I was doing, what I was capable of. But that production was, looking back at it now, like the worst thing that could have happened to my mental health,
oh, wow.
because it took me to a place that I wasn't ready to confront yet. Yeah, like my mom passed away in May of that year, and the first week of June we were in rehearsals for this really demanding production where my character loses her brother and her lover, like in the same show. And I
God,
just had to go through that really raw, like emotional space for months after I was not even giving myself the space to grieve my mother's passing. Like I just kept shoving it to the back, like shoving all of that loss and that pain to the back, and pushing through because people expect me to show up. I can't cancel this production. It would be career suicide. And like by the end of that year, just like I had a complete breakdown because psychologically, like my brain, my body, everything spiritually, it said like, enough. If you don't deal with this, it's going to mess you up for the rest of your life. You have to slow down. You have to face the things that you've been avoiding your entire life. And that was, I think, yeah, the hardest thing that I've ever had to go through in my entire life. There were just moments of being so completely demotivated and not wanting to be in so much pain, like not wanting to live, not being able to get out of bed in the morning. And it was just, yeah, it was the beginning of a very long process of healing, in developing a relationship with myself, like a relationship that I never had before.
yeah. No, I you
Yeah.
know, I am. I think so many people will, it's, one is always slightly apprehensive to talk about this stuff because it's either that we find it uncomfortable, or either it seems like you're trying to go on this emotional porn kind of thing almost, where you just, it's all about, all of that. But I know the value of people hearing about other people's journeys, and I think especially for somebody like you, who is not only in the public eye, so to speak, but also your personality. I think some people might find it surprising, that this is some of the stuff that you've gone through, and I think that it's of immense value for anybody to be able to relate that kind of thing. Have you found?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, have you found that you feel some sort of responsibility to share your journey in this way?
Yeah. I always think back at the sense of complete isolation that I felt during that time,
Yeah,
because nobody else that I knew uh, was being open, transparent about going through anything similar to that. So I felt so much shame because of what I was experiencing,
yeah,
because I didn't find that there was like resonance or representation with anyone around me. And that really was the beginning of me finding my voice to be transparent. But I'm also sensitive about not sensationalizing it. It's
yeah,
something that I've been through. I developed tools from going through that experience, and I think my greater message would be, to all of us, that we can engage with the things that are difficult, and you can grow and you can heal from anything that you can imagine, really. um, and it's a sense of empowering yourself with that knowledge and getting the support that you need to help you through that. And that's really why I speak about what I've been through, and why I'm happy to speak about it.
yeah,
It might have been my story, but it's not something that I've experienced, yeah, individually, just by myself. There are so many of my fellow artists, and I see this very much in the acting circles, the actors and actresses. Because
yeah,
what saves me as a musician sometimes is um, you perform, but you don't have to take on the personality and the trauma of a character, which is what you do when you do something like an opera or musical theater or a play.
yeah,
And like managing that energetically has become like something that I'm very curious and passionate about. How do you do that in a healthy way, without it bleeding into your own traumas and like accumulating into this complex PTSD situation,
Yeah.
which is not helpful at all.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because I mean, the other thing is the last time that we saw each other, you were just starting preparations for Queenie Heller, which is a play by. It is written by Christo Davids, isn't it? I mean, he directed
Yes,
it. Yeah.
the
Okay.
text, the original text is by Christo Davids and his uncle Lloyd Davids, and
Right.
then Christo directed the production as well.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, you know how because it's not light stuff. You know, how did you relate to how did you relate to your character, and you know, and you know, how did you have to manage you know, your energies and your personal sort of relationship to the thing, you know?
That's so interesting. Things always play out the way that they're supposed to, like with the most potent kind of circumstances surrounding it.
Yeah,
The play is about 5 homeless people living on the steps of the Good Hope Center in Cape Town.
yeah,
And all of these people, obviously, as homeless people finding themselves living on the street, they each have a unique set of circumstances that resulted in that being their living situation. And so we knew that these were complex characters. They were characters that carried a lot of trauma themselves. And all of this while we were rehearsing the production in September last year and performing at Art Club. This was when all of the femicide protests were happening in the country, and it was
right.
just such a
Yeah,
heightened
yeah,
time, you know. And both of the female characters in the show are women that have been abused and assaulted and exploited, and yeah, so complex and so traumatized. And to take that on, first of all, I can just commend the team that were part of producing the show, and
yeah,
all of my fellow thespians, because they really created a sacred space of us being able to climb into these characters and to go on this journey together and to emotionally support each other and keep each
yeah,
other safe. Um, but even after that production ended, there was still a lot of work that I had to do to just debrief and shed all of the things that I had subconsciously taken on. And initially, I had a session with an energy healer who looks at your energy body, like the way that your chakras are functioning. And she definitely said to me, one of the first things, without even knowing the extent of the process that I had just been through, she was like, there's a second persona, like superimposed on top of your own energy body, of things that
wow,
you are carrying, like trauma that you're carrying that is not yours. And that really woke me up to the responsibility and the awareness that we need to have with when we go into these situations, you know. And I just
yeah,
don't see enough of the healthy way of engaging with these things happening in the industry as it
yeah,
is. And that
yeah,
concerns me. That concerns me.
yeah,
Um, that we're not, because of the way that the industry is run in an unregulated way, like we don't really
yeah,
have support systems to help us through these things. And how many freelance artists can really afford to be
absolutely.
doing the things that they need to keep them in healthy places? Like, when you invest in your mental health, that is a financial sacrifice also that you
Yeah,
make.
absolutely.
And I think with the way that COVID has spiraled, to suddenly find yourself in an industry that is the most unsupported, um, while dealing with like all of the financial insecurity and all of it becomes really scary. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
you know,
no,
that people are like really struggling and mentally in dark places because of this pandemic, and also because of the lack of support that existed before. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I can absolutely concur with that. I mean, funny enough, a couple of days ago, I was watching an interview or podcast thing with a British, well, he's an ex-junior doctor in the UK, and but he's actually now ironically gone into into the entertainment industry, sort of stand-up comedy, and he's written a book, sort of comedy satire, but also very serious thing about the NHS, you know, the sort of health system in the UK. But the big thing was, you know, that he left it because there was no support, you know, for the kind of stuff that he was going through, sort of psychologically, and this feeling of aloneness, because there's not because there are not structures put in place, you know, there is not this sense of community, and you do feel like you have to deal with stuff on your own, and you know that, I mean, I always, you know, the reason why I am always so keen to talk about it is because I feel very passionately that it's something that we should, you know, sort of deal with head on, and then that we should have these structures in place to keep people safe, you know, as you say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so important. I think knowing what the lockdown is and the way that the phases are being rolled out, and that our industry will probably only come back online in some way that we recognize it a year from now. We are in a position where we are birthing a new way of existing, and the arts, in the way that it has existed, it's very evident now that it's never been sustainable under the current model that it's been functioning, and that we have a lot of work cut out for us in the way that we are going to be building the industry up from the ground again. A massive change needs to come, and maybe this is the breakdown that we needed to demolish the old order, you know, as harsh and as dramatic as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I, of course, you know, don't have the answers, but I mean, funnily enough, my longtime mentor, Leon Bosch, who's also from Cape Town but living in the UK now, has for years been talking about a paradigm shift. Sort of a change in the way that we do stuff, and I suppose exactly like you say, you know, perhaps this is the point in which at which we realize that, you know, we've got an opportunity, you know, to explore these different, you know, possibilities, if you like. And you, the other bit of your artillery is the presenting thing, and you just, I mean, you recently did the 80 Spence on Via TV.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to talk about a bit about that?
Yeah, that was such a wonderful project. It was my second show that I did with Via. Sometime last year, they spoke to me about the possibility of hosting like a historical cooking show. It's not really so much about like perfecting recipes. It's about looking at the food culture from almost a decade ago to now, to how that's developed through the lens of Die Burger as a publication.
Right.
And so, everything was set up, and then we shot for a week at Sphere.
Lovely.
Out in Stellenbosch. We did all of the episodes and interviewed all of the guests. It was intense. It was great.
Yeah.
All of the other, like the voiceovers and the intro and outro links that we had to shoot at a separate location, like shortly afterwards. But I love the history behind it, and anything that has like a historical context just makes things interesting to me. About how the food culture has evolved, and how with globalization, like, we just have access to so many different culinary cultures, and how that has bled into our South African food landscape. So yeah, it's been wonderful to just learn about that and get outside people's perspective about how they experience that.
Yeah, now I can imagine.
So I think yeah, it was great fun. The show was running for 13 weeks, 13 episodes, and I think like last week or the week before was the final episode of that. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, and I mean, I'm hoping that we will get to talk again at some point in the future, and you know, I'll you know, that we can keep track of all of your exciting projects, you know. But just as a sort of last question, you know, there's this great quote by Horace Mann, you know, the educator, which I always, you know, it's sort of my mantra. But you know, that says, you know, be ashamed to die until you've scored a victory for humankind. You know, what is that victory for you? What is that thing that you, if you one day go out, you know, that you want to have done or scored, so to speak?
Wow. Thank you for that question. Wow, and what a wonderful quote as well.
Yeah, I love it.
What this, yeah, what this COVID pandemic really has given me the space to do is to reevaluate like my purpose and my path with all of the things that I've been doing up till now, and how all of that will tie in together eventually one day. And I think music has always been a beautiful tool of healing for me. Even as a child, I remember like being not even 7 years old and isolating myself and just singing to myself and crying, like all of the things that I didn't have the words for yet, or like family dynamics that children don't understand, but they feel it deeply. Like
Yeah,
music has just always been like medicine to me.
yeah,
And more and more now, like as I'm on my path and I'm experiencing like real states of flow and transcendence in performance sometimes,
oh,
like where you just go into the zone and you're like, you have this out of body but completely present and grounded experience of like swimming, living, existing in the music. um
amazing. Yeah,
and like people saying that when I've experienced those moments, like they also experience some deeper sense of catharsis, and me recognizing like the potency and the potential in that. So one of my interests going forward now, I am learning about, I have an interest in sound therapy, and with the different healing spaces and modalities that I've been exposed to, the way that shamanic sound journeys take place. So
yeah,
I'm researching that, and I already have somebody that is a contact for me, with getting into that space and learning more about it. So I definitely want to use my musicianship in future in a space that is geared towards healing,
yeah,
that's more spiritual. And with going through the experience of really understanding grief and going through that
yeah,
process myself with my mom, I'm also very drawn to the work death doulas do, where you have like birth doulas who are spiritual midwives to people, to women welcoming children into the world. There are also people who work with souls passing into the other realm from this one, and the support and the spirituality that comes with assisting that person and their loved ones around them. So that's also one of the areas of focus that I'll be moving into the future. But that will take time, and it's happening in its own organic way. And it
yeah.
doesn't mean that I will ever stop being an artist. I just think, yeah, there's a way still as I'm living it that the path is being revealed to me in the way that all of these different interests, and yeah, meaningful ways of giving of myself, that it will tie together, um, and open up a new way of existing for me.
Ah, lovely. I actually just, I mean, I actually just know the lighting is slightly funny on your side. So I actually just noticed that you cut your hair.
I
Yeah,
did,
yeah,
yeah. Like
no.
after the past, you know what? It's great that castings aren't really happening at the moment, or minimal. It's minimal castings and things where continuity was always like you have to keep your hair a certain way if people want to hire
Yeah,
you and they have this look that they want. And just all of the things that I've been shedding like it was so liberating to just like sit down in a chair and ask one of my beautiful housemates here at the ashram to just shave it off. And it was like a symbolic of letting go of the old and welcoming the new. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel fresh and I feel energized by it. And a little bit more badass. Like I think I've also been eating too much Vikings.
Yeah. No,
But yeah.
it looks great, and that's what I mean. I was one, you know, I had the suspicion that it might be a symbolic thing, you know, because we attach so much, you know, to our hair, especially. I mean, you know, not just our appearance, but our hair for some reason. Um, so it must have taken something to make that decision. You
No, I've been thinking about it for a while, and then this COVID was like, no more excuses, just happened. And then it
Just
wasn't
do
a
it.
big deal. It was so anticlimactic. It was just like, yeah, shave it off. And I put a video up of me initial like big part of it at the back, and people were freaking out. They're like, how can you do this? No, don't cut it. I'm like, other people are more attached to my hair than I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
Yeah.
is interesting, because isn't that the way that life is sometimes? Like people have all of these ideas and projections of what they'd like you to do or what they expect from you, and you can just liberate yourself from all of that nonsense, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. I take that. I think that's yeah, and that's a good place to pause anyway, because as I say, you know, I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to speak again in the future. I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody
I'd love to.
will be interested to hear how you're keeping up. Lynelle, thank you ever so much for giving up some of your time to have a chat. It's always great. Yeah.
Nice at all. Yeah, thank you for the chat, and I hope that we'll see each other soon, like at a concert where we can make music and have a glass of
Yeah,
wine together. Please God.
exactly. We have to. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there will be opportunities, you know, for performance, for whatever, you know, for spending time together in a different way. We're gonna just have to make it work. But you know,
Yeah.
thanks. It's great as ever to chat. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Yeah, stay safe and stay healthy.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
Coolio. Ciao.
Ciao.